You ever notice how people don't appreciate something until it's gone? It's one of the biggest truths about human nature. What's always there, what's always available, is often taken for granted. And this applies in relationships just as much as anything else. When you're the one always reaching out, always checking in, always initiating the conversation, it creates an unspoken dynamic. She expects it. It's familiar, it's predictable, and over time, what's predictable becomes routine, and what's routine often becomes invisible. She doesn't have to think about you because she knows you're always there. You've made yourself a certainty in her life. But the moment you stop, something shifts. Suddenly, that attention, the messages, the calls, the check ins disappear. And at first, she might not even notice. Maybe she assumes you got busy or she thinks nothing of it, but then time starts passing. A day, a couple of days, a week. And now the silence starts to feel different. It's no longer just a break in the usual pattern, it's an absence. An absence creates space for thought. Now she's wondering, why hasn't he reached out? She checks her phone, no missed calls, no messages. Maybe she even scrolls through old conversations looking for signs. Did something happen? Did she do something wrong? Did you move on? And this is where the power of absence really comes into play. Because when you step back, when you remove yourself from the equation, you force a shift in perspective. See, when you were always reaching out, she didn't have to think about whether she wanted to talk to you. It was already decided for her. But now, the ball is in her court. And here's what happens next. Her mind starts filling in the blanks. At first, she might brush it off. Maybe she convinces herself she doesn't care. But the longer the silence stretches, the more uneasy she feels. Because here's the thing about people. We're wired to notice what's missing more than what's present. Think about it. When you lose your keys, suddenly they're the most important thing in the world. When your favorite song disappears from a playlist, you notice it right away. And when someone who is always around suddenly isn't, that absence becomes loud. And now a shift starts happening. She's not just wondering why you start reaching out, she's starting to question her own feelings. And that's where real attraction, real curiosity, and real desire start to build. See, when someone is constantly available, the brain doesn't assign them the same level of value. But when that availability is taken away, when you introduce uncertainty, that's when emotions intensify. It's basic psychology. Scarcity increases value. And that's exactly what's happening here. She starts thinking about you in a way she didn't before. She starts wondering if she underestimated you, if she took you for granted. Maybe she even starts looking at your social media, trying to get a sense of what's changed. And the best part, you didn't have to do anything but step back. This is why chasing, over pursuing, and constantly trying to prove your worth never works. It doesn't create attraction. It doesn't build respect. It only makes you look like someone who needs validation. But the moment you stop trying so hard, the moment you let go and focus on yourself instead of waiting for her response, you completely change the dynamic. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. What if she doesn't notice? What if she doesn't care? Here's the truth. If someone genuinely had no interest in you, then yes, they might not care. But if there was even a small amount of attraction, if there was even a spark, your absence will magnify it. It will make her question things. And more importantly, even if she doesn't come running, you win. Because stepping back isn't about manipulating someone into chasing you. It's about regaining your own power. It's about proving to yourself that you don't need to beg for attention, that you bring value to the table. And if someone doesn't see it, that's their loss, not yours. So whether she comes back or not, the outcome is always in your favor. If she does, it's because your absence reminded her of your worth. And if she doesn't, it just proves that she was never really meant for you in the first place. You ever notice how people don't see things the same way once they're no longer certain about them? When something is always there, always predictable, it starts to lose its impact. But the moment that certainty disappears, the way we perceive it changes. And that's exactly what happens when you stop reaching out. At first, she might not think much of it. Maybe she assumes you're just busy, or maybe she tells herself it doesn't matter. But deep down, something has shifted. Because before, she knew where you stood. She knew you'd always check in, always text, always be available. And now she's not so sure. That uncertainty does something powerful. It forces her to think about you in a way she didn't before. See, when someone is always there, their presence becomes expected. It blends into the background. But when that presence is suddenly gone, the mind starts to notice. Now she's wondering, why isn't he reaching out? She might tell herself it's no big deal, but the question lingers. Because whether she realizes it or not, she's looking at you differently now. Before, she may have seen you as someone who was always chasing, always waiting for her attention. But now, that's not the case. And that change in perception is everything. Because here's the thing, when you stop reaching out, you remove the expectation that you'll always be the one initiating, and that forces her to reevaluate. Instead of assuming you'll be there, she starts wondering if she ever really saw your worth in the first place. And that's when the shift truly happens. At first, she might act indifferent. Maybe she thinks, oh, well, he's moved on, or he's just playing a game. But the longer you hold your ground, the more her perception starts changing. Now, instead of thinking of you as someone who was always there, she starts seeing you as someone with options, someone who isn't desperate for her attention. And that's attractive, because confidence isn't about words. It's about action. And when you stop chasing, you're showing her something without even saying a word, that you're a man who values himself, that you don't need to beg for attention, that you have enough self-respect to let go when it's not being reciprocated. And here's what's crazy. When she starts seeing you this way, she may start questioning whether she ever saw the full picture before. Because when someone is always available, we don't always appreciate them. But when they step back, it creates space for us to see them in a new light. And that's when she starts thinking. Maybe she remembers a conversation where you made her laugh. Maybe she recalls a time when you showed up for her in a way no one else did. Maybe she starts comparing you to the other people in her life and realizes that the attention you gave her wasn't something she should have taken for granted. Now, whether she acts on this or not depends on her. Some people will let their pride keep them from reaching out, even if they want to. Others will find excuses to start a conversation, maybe a random text, maybe liking an old post, maybe showing up where she knows you'll be. But the key here is that you're no longer in the position of chasing. You flip the script. And that only happened because you were willing to let go. So when you stop reaching out, understand that you're not just pulling away, you're allowing a shift in perception to take place. You're letting her see you in a way she never did before. And whether she comes back or not, you've already won. Because you didn't just change how she saw you, you changed how you saw yourself. And that's where real power begins. When you think about value, what comes to mind? We often think about material things. money, cars, clothes. But value isn't just about tangible objects. It's about perception. It's about how something or someone is seen. And in relationships, that perception is everything. Now, here's the truth: scarcity increases value. When something is abundant, when it's always there, it's easy to overlook. But when it becomes harder to get, when it's no longer just around whenever you need it, the perception of its value skyrockets. And that's exactly what happens when you stop reaching out. In the beginning, when you were always available, she might have taken your attention for granted. She knew you were there. And because of that, the effort you put into reaching out, the time you spent thinking about her, it didn't seem as special. It was always there, so it didn't need to be appreciated. But the moment you stop, the moment you pull back and allow some distance, something shifts. That availability that she once had easy access to isn't as easy anymore. It's no longer a given. And that's when the power of scarcity kicks in. She starts to notice your absence in ways she didn't before. Your attention, your time, your energy, they're no longer hers for the taking. And that's when she starts valuing it more. She may not even realize it consciously at first, but what's happening is that your absence makes her want you more. And this isn't manipulation, it's just the way people work. When something is around too much, we stop seeing its worth. But the moment it's gone, it becomes rare. And we crave rarity. Think about it. The things we covet are often the things we can't get easily. The limited edition shoes, the exclusive concerts, the rare collectibles, these things hold more value because they're hard to come by. And that's exactly how she begins to see you when you stop reaching out. But here's the real kicker. It's not just about the time or effort you were putting in. It's about how your behavior shows that you value yourself. When you stop chasing, when you stop constantly trying to get her attention, you're communicating something incredibly important. You have your own worth. You have your own life, your own priorities. You're not waiting around for her to validate your existence. You're living your life, and if she wants to be a part of it, she has to meet you at your level. And this shift, this subtle change in how she perceives you, it's magnetic because what's rare is precious. And when she realizes that she's no longer the center of your world, that your attention is not just freely given, but is earned, it changes how she feels about you. Now, I'm not saying you should play games. That's not what this is about. It's about knowing your worth and not settling for less. It's about not always being the one to initiate and putting yourself in a position where you're waiting around for her attention. It's about standing firm in the knowledge that you deserve to be treated with the same respect and attention you give. And when you stop overextending, when you create that space, it makes her think. It makes her ask herself questions. Why isn't he reaching out? What has changed? And those questions are the beginning of a shift in how she sees you. She starts to wonder, am I really giving him the attention he deserves? And that doubt, that's where the real attraction grows. But here's the beauty of this. It's not just about her coming back to you. It's about you coming back to yourself. Because when you stop chasing and make your own life a priority, you start valuing your own time. You stop letting people walk all over you. Stop letting others take your energy for granted. And that's where true value comes from. So whether she comes running or not, the moment you stop overextending yourself, you begin to see your own value in ways you hadn't before. And that's a feeling no one can take away from you. At first, it may seem like a simple change, but the emotional journey that follows when you stop reaching out is a lot more complex than it might appear. In the beginning, when you were always the one to make the effort, it might have been easy for her to brush off your presence or take you for granted. But once you stop, Once that constant connection begins to fade, a wave of uncertainty starts to set in. And with that uncertainty comes a deeper emotional roller coaster. At first, she might feel relief. She may not have even noticed how much she was relying on your attention. Maybe she felt overwhelmed by your constant efforts, or maybe she thought she needed some space. She might even feel like she has more freedom now that you're no longer so present. For a short while, she might convince herself she's fine without you, that she doesn't need you chasing her. But here's the thing about emotions. They don't always follow logical patterns. What starts as relief can quickly turn into confusion. When you stop reaching out, she goes from having something she could rely on to having nothing to rely on. And that uncertainty, it starts to gnaw at her. The emotional roller coaster she goes through is subtle at first, but it builds over time. Maybe she's not sure what to feel, or she doesn't know how to react. There's a bit of discomfort in the air now, because things aren't as they used to be. Her mind begins to wonder, why isn't he trying to talk to me? What did I do wrong? And that doubt, that insecurity starts to settle in. For some people, this uncertainty leads to reflection. They begin to replay their interactions with you in their minds, looking for signs they missed, trying to figure out if something changed or if they pushed you away. Maybe she recalls moments when she wasn't as responsive or when she could have been more present, and now she's wondering if she made a mistake. But here's the thing. Sometimes this emotional roller coaster doesn't end with clarity right away. It doesn't always mean she'll come running back immediately. In fact, it might make her more distant at first. There's pride, there's hesitation, there's uncertainty. She might not be ready to admit she misses you or that she made a mistake, but that emotional turbulence is real and it's happening in the background. You might notice subtle signs. Maybe she starts showing up where you hang out more often. Maybe she comments on something you posted on social media. Or maybe she suddenly seems more curious about what's going on in your life. These might seem like small things, but they're the first signs that her emotional state is shifting. She's starting to feel the absence, and it's making her pay attention. It's easy to assume that when someone pulls away, they just don't care or that they've completely moved on. But the reality is, emotions are messy, and sometimes it takes a little distance for someone to realize how much they actually care. They need that emotional roller coaster to process their feelings. They need that uncertainty to trigger a deeper reflection on what they have and what they may have lost. So when she starts coming around, when she begins to show interest again, it's not because you were playing a game or trying to manipulate her. It's because you allowed the emotional journey to take its course. You gave her the space to process her feelings, and now she's realizing in her own way that maybe she misses you. But remember, this emotional roller coaster isn't just for her. It's for you too. As you stop reaching out and stop overextending yourself, you're also going through your own emotional journey. You might feel frustration at first, maybe some doubt or fear. It's uncomfortable to pull back, especially if you're used to always being there. But this journey of emotional growth is necessary for both parties involved. It's about seeing the value in each other and in yourself, and that emotional turbulence is often the catalyst for that realization. The bottom line is, when you stop reaching out, you create space for emotions to unfold naturally. You allow both of you to process things, to think deeply about what you want and what you need, and that emotional journey, as uncertain and confusing as it may seem at first, is often what leads to clarity. When she finally does come back, it's because the emotional roller coaster has led her to a place of understanding about you, about herself and about the relationship. And when that happens, you'll know that the emotional ride was worth it because it will have brought clarity and realignment, not just for her, but for you too. When you stop reaching out, one of the most powerful things that can happen is that she comes back. And when that happens, it's not just because of luck or coincidence, it's because your absence made her realize something. In the beginning, when you were always available, she may not have truly understood the value you brought to her life. But when you step back, when you allow that space to grow, she starts to see things differently. There's a shift in her perspective. At first, it's subtle. She might not even fully recognize it. But over time, she begins to understand that your attention, your presence, isn't something that should be taken for granted. You stop chasing, and suddenly her mind starts to play the what if game. What if she's lost you for good? What if you're moving on? What if someone else is now getting your attention? And that thought, that fear of losing you, starts to stir something within her. The truth is, people often don't realize how much they care until they feel that potential loss. Your absence creates this emotional gap, and it triggers the kind of reflection that's hard to ignore. She begins to realize what she had with you, how you made her feel, and that maybe she took it for granted. But the beauty of this situation is that she's not just coming back out of fear or desperation. She's coming back because she now values what you offer. Her perspective has shifted. She sees you as someone who is worthy of respect, attention, and commitment. You're no longer the person who will just fall into place whenever she decides to engage. You've shown her that your time and energy are valuable, and that's a powerful shift in how she views you. When she comes running back, it's a result of this transformation, both hers and yours. Your absence forced her to reconsider her feelings, and now she's looking at you through a clearer lens. It's not just about your presence anymore, it's about your worth. And now she wants to make sure she doesn't lose that. But even when she comes back, remember that this doesn't mean you go back to the old dynamic. This is your opportunity to set new boundaries, to ensure that there's respect and balance moving forward. She's coming back because she realizes you're worth the effort, and it's up to you to ensure that the effort is mutual from here on out. So when she comes running, know that it's because your absence showed her what she had, and your presence now means more to her than ever before. And that's not just a win for the relationship, it's a win for you too. When she comes running back, it's easy to get caught up in the moment, to want to jump back into the same patterns that existed before. But this is where you have to remember that things have changed, and you need to stay grounded in the progress you've made. The truth is, when she comes back, it's not just about her wanting you back. It's about you maintaining control over the situation and ensuring that things are balanced and healthy moving forward. This moment of her coming back is a reflection of both her realizing your worth and you having the strength to step back in the first place. It shows that you were able to hold your own, to value yourself enough not to chase, and that's powerful. It's tempting to think that just because she returns, things should go back to how they were. But that's where you can set a new standard. When she reaches out, it's important to assess whether the dynamic has changed for the better. Are the boundaries clearer now? Is there more mutual respect? Are you both coming to the table with the same? These are the questions you need to ask yourself, because just because she comes running doesn't mean things will automatically be better if you fall back into old habits. you're in a stronger position now because you've shown her that you won't just accept anything. She's seen that you're not someone who will just hang around for scraps of attention. That's something she will now respect more. And this is your opportunity to ensure that the relationship or whatever dynamic you have is built on a foundation of equality and mutual respect. So when she comes back, don't rush to fill the silence or fall into old ways. Take your time, set those boundaries. Make sure that both of you are clear on what you need from each other. This is the point where you build something that lasts, not just something that will fade into the same old cycle. At the end of the day, whether she comes running back or not, the most important thing is that you never lose sight of your own value. If she's coming back, it's because you've shown her you're someone worth fighting for. And if she doesn't, well, you've still come out ahead because you've learned to value yourself first, and that's the most powerful thing of all.